Hello, Internet. It is I, the Malik Aaron, and welcome back to Box Office Recaps. So, this is part two of my summer 2024 recap. Part one went over all of the winners, success stories, the positives. This video is the opposite of that. We're going over all of the losers, failures, disappointments, bombs, any other negative word you can use. So, yeah, that's what this video is about. And compared to last year, this past summer wasn't as rough when it came to bombs or how significant the bombs were, because last year, my God, we had some catastrophes like The Flash, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny. Elemental was on its way of being a catastrophe, but it ended up saving itself. Same couldn't be said for a Haunted Mansion. Then there's Blue Beetle, that was a big bust. And then we had a lot of hella expensive movies just not hitting the highs that they should. They should have, like Fast X, Little Mermaid, Transformers Rise of the Beast, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. So yeah, last year was rough. This year wasn't quite as bad, especially when it comes to like super expensive flops. I don't think there's a single movie I'm going to be talking about in this video that had a budget of over like 200 mil. Definitely not over 250 mil. So that's nice. But yeah, the bombs were still there. They were still present, and we are going to talk about them. So we're starting off with May. May had, of all the moms, May was definitely the most negative in tone. You're about to see why. So we start out with Fall Guy, which, man, this upsets me. This makes me mad because with Fall Guy, I saw a trailer for it and I was like, this looks like fun. I should give it a watch. And then I did see the movie and I was like, yep, this was a fun movie. I liked it. I had a good time. And yeah, that's how I thought. And before it came out, I was thinking this movie had a lot going for it. I was thinking, okay, this movie has the first weekend of summer. I mean, usually a Marvel movie is here, but because of the strikes, that's not the case this year. Um, so you have that first weekend of summer, which is a very lucrative release date. You have Ryan Gosling, who's like right off the success of the wild success that was Barbie. So I thought that would help the movie a bit. And yeah, like I thought for sure this movie had the potential to be a hit, especially after reviews came out. But that didn't happen at all. This movie just failed to connect. It opened with like $27 million, and I was just like, what? Like, I thought it opened with like 40 mil, like the 30s, like minimum. So for it to hit under 30 million, that shocked me in a bad way. And I mean, its legs were all right after that, but it didn't matter. Ended up making like 92 million domestically, 180 million worldwide on a budget of 125 million. That's a bomb. That is a certified bomb right there. So what went wrong? From what I've read, there's several factors that affected this movie. One of them is the fact that the show this movie was based off, no one remembers. It was never really all that popular to begin with, at least compared to like other shows at the time. There's the fact that Ryan Gosling, you know, I guess it's the success of Barbie gave a lot of people like false expectations of how many tickets he can sell. And I mean, Barbie was clearly an exception and not the norm for Ryan Gosling, because his movies merely do like all right. Like they don't like. I think it's average, like box office wise, it's average. Is like most of his movies like hit the teens, usually the low teens. I mean, look at Blade Runner 2049, another like well received flop. I mean, that movie, despite having a lot of hype, had a solid release date and everything, it just failed to take off and ended up being a huge flop. And the same thing happened here, you know. And you know what happened with Ryan Gosling here is pretty much what happened with Tom Cruise with Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, where after Top Gun Maverick was such a enormous success, a mind-boggling success, a lot of people, including me, thought that success would translate over to Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, and it did not. Not at all. Granted, that movie had the deal with Barbenheimer. That wasn't going to help anything. But yeah, so just because you see an actor in like a huge movie does not mean that success will automatically transfer over to another movie, okay? Like there's no guarantee of that. And apparently there's the fact that marketing wise, some people thought the movie kind of dropped the ball. People didn't know what the plot was. People didn't know how to explain the movie. And I guess the fact like the movie within a movie aspect, just people don't really like all that much. And yeah, it's a shame this movie did as bad as it did because it's not a bad movie at all. I liked it quite a bit. I definitely would rank it as a movie that deserved better. I definitely would say that. So yeah, and the what happened with this was definitely an omen for the rest of the month. And honestly, like the whole month of May almost made me give up on 2024 as a whole, box office wise, as you'll soon see. Yeah, Fall Guy got the summer off to a really terrible start. And I forgot to mention Star Wars Episode 1, that re release. It did alright, did fine. I just forgot to mention it in the last video. Not another church movie. Why was this released? Why does it have a wide release? Why did it even exist? I mean, look at it. Just what? No, we're moving on. May 17th. Okay, Back to Black. Let's talk about that for a quick moment. So this was the Amy Winehouse biopic, and the failure of this movie is pretty easy to explain. I mean, while Amy Winehouse was big in the UK, in the States, not so much. She was never that big here, so obviously that would have a negative impact on the movie's chances over here. It's the fact the reviews weren't good, the marketing campaign was just non-existent for the most part, and people just didn't care. Like this is a prime example of complete audience disinterest, and people didn't watch it. Of like 2.8 million, 6 million domestically, big yikes. And now no one remembers this movie even came out, even though it hasn't even been like 6 months since it released. Now, If was the big movie of the weekend, May 17th. And, this movie, it was hard to predict how this movie would go because, I mean, it had its positives. I mean, this is from John Krasinski. He, Jim from The Office. He, made the Quiet Place movies, 1 and 2, which were both hits. This obviously isn't like the Quiet Place movies, but still, yeah, he still has his name attached to this. So I thought maybe this movie could be like a quality flick. And then there's the fact that the cast for this movie was hella stacked. I mean, let me show you like just a list of names. Look at all these names. Look at that. It's a lot of people, a lot of notable people. So yeah, the cast was ridiculous for this movie. And I thought the release date was solid. I mean, pre Memorial Day weekend can be a really good time to release a movie. Like, really good. I mean, Shrek 1 through 4, all those movies released before Memorial Day, as did the Star Wars prequels. They all did the same thing. You also have movies like Deadpool 2, John Wick 3, trying to think of some others. I guess Pirates 4, that did it as well. Um, Godzilla 2014 is another one. Pitch Perfect 2 is another one. So, yeah, a Matrix Reloaded, that's a big one right there. So, yeah, pre-Memorial Day weekend can be great. That wasn't the case here. This movie opened for like 33.7 million, which isn't great, but it could have been worse. I mean, For a moment, it looked like it was going to hit the 20s, which would have been real catastrophic. But it hit like over 30. So its chances of 100 mil were still alive and ultimately hit 111 million, which by itself is okay, especially for an original movie like this. I mean, it's not a great performance, but it's not terrible. It is just passable at best. What wasn't passable was his international run, and that killed the movie. That killed any chance of profitability because the movie cost 110 million, made 184 million, so you're very much not breaking even with that. So, like, what went wrong here? Well, I can tell you when I watched the trailer for this movie, it made me cringe, and that's never a good thing. Like, it it just turned me off from the movie. Honestly, just like the jokes the movie tried to tell from the trailer, I was just like, ugh, no, this is not it. I was like hoping against hope maybe this was just like a bad trailer or something, but yeah, just apparently for reviews for this movie weren't that great, but its audience score was better, so the people who watched it liked it. Didn't really matter in the end, but you got that. And yeah, I mean, compared to the other two big flops that came out of May, this one looks the best, but that again, it means nothing. That is like such a low bar to say, oh, this didn't do as bad as the other two, big flops. So yeah, if didn't connect. But compared to Mad Max and Furiosa, it looks like say I'm trying to think of a movie. I guess like Inside Out 2 in comparison to Furiosa. So Furiosa, just like Fall Guy, I was interested in this movie. I saw this movie. I really liked the movie. I just like how the movie like felt. Just like the energy the movie had. I loved Chris Hemsworth in the movie. He was amazing as the villain, Dementus. Like I thought he was fantastic. So to see this fail the way it did, it broke my heart. But I knew deep down this movie was never going to be a hit. For the main reason being that Mad Max is just not. Well, it's just not accessible. It's very niche compared to a lot of big franchises. It really only appeals to like men, and that's it. There's like no crossover appeal at all. And there's the fact that the Mad Max movies, I mean, sure, they're well liked, very well liked, but they've never been big hits. And Mad Max Fury Road, um, while it did all right, it did fine, but that's all it did. It did fine, just fine, and yeah, it didn't really help this movie's Furiosa's chances like commercially. And the fact that Fury Road came out 9 years ago, which is just way too long of a gap between like franchise entries. Granted, the gap between Inside Out and Inside Out 2 was 9 years, but Inside Out is infinitely more accessible and successful than Mad Max ever was. So had that advantage. But yeah, this movie came out Memorial Day weekend, and boy, it just crashed and burned, say the least. Opened with 26 million. It almost lost to Garfield. I actually thought it was gonna lose to Garfield, but it managed to just squeak out a very minor victory, a very worthless victory in the grand scheme of things. Its legs after that just weren't there. Made 67 million, 172 million on a budget of 168 million. Disaster. Just disaster. Of all the summer bombs, this one is the biggest when it comes to budget. Definitely. Well, it's between this and another like I guess Borderlands, but not actually. No, I feel like this is the bigger flop easily. And compared to Fury Road, I mean, goddamn. I mean, Fury Road, 45 million opening, 153 million domestic, 368 million worldwide. Furiosa made less than half. Less than half of Fury Road. Like that tells you everything right there. And I forgot to mention that this movie was both a spin-off and a prequel. Two things that don't really help a movie's box office. Granted, A Quiet Place Day One was both those things, but that series, unlike Mad Max, is widely accessible. Like a lot of people, and just successful in general. Mad Max just isn't that. Okay, it's always been niche, and this movie wasn't gonna change that at all. So yeah, will we see another Mad Max Fury? Well, yeah, sorry, God, Mad Max movie again? I doubt it. With a failure like this, I don't think Warner Brothers is gonna want to touch Mad Max ever again. But you never know. You never know. Maybe they'll try again in the far future. It definitely won't be anytime soon. But yeah, absolute bomb right here. Absolute disaster. A disaster that deserved better, but a disaster nonetheless. What else we got? Sight. I mean, I didn't expect this to make an impact at all. I mean, this is from like Angel Studios. I mean, sure they had a huge hit last year with Sound of Freedom, but after that they've never been able to replicate that success, which just tells me that Sound of Freedom was just a one-hit wonder for them, and Sight, well, it was basically unseen. I just realized the joke I just made. Oh, like 2.8 million, made like 7 million. No one cared. And then May 31st, this was a complete waste of a weekend. Like it was just nothing happened. There were no major releases. Complete waste of time. And this was rock bottom for summer, as I mentioned in the last video. Absolute rock bottom right here. No question about it. I mean, the highest grossing movie could even make like 10 million. Like, just come on. I know the strikes screwed up everything, but like you couldn't have released a movie like on this weekend. Like it wouldn't have hurt. Like a major studio release, it would not have hurt at all. Like it really wouldn't have. Yeah, May 31st, terrible. Then June happened and everything started to turn around, as I mentioned in part one. But that doesn't mean June was flawless, as we're about to show you. The Watchers, okay. So I mentioned Trap in part one, where that was from M. Night Shyamalan. Well, this movie right here is from M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. Yeah. Yeah, right here. And, that made me. I had like two minds when I heard about that. I was thinking, okay, one, maybe his daughter is hella talented, or two, she only got the job because of nepotism. And from what I've heard from reviews, yeah, the second number two is a lot more likely. So, yeah, I was interested in this movie. I was curious. But then, I heard about it and I was like, you know what? No thanks. And at the box office, oof. I thought maybe this could break out, but it did not. Almost $7 million, made like 19 mil, 32 mil on a budget of like 30 million. Like, oof. That is a loss right there. And this was one of the many horror movies that came out this year that just failed to deliver. We would get successful horror movies later on, but yeah, this is just a mistake. And it's a good thing Trap did okay, because I don't it would have been real bad for father and daughter to both bomb on the same summer. Yeah, The Watchers flop. Then we move on. I get this Treasure in Tuesday, but no one cares about those movies. Not even I do. Bike Riders. Okay, that's next. This movie, I'm not sure why it failed the way it did. I don't have like a solid explanation as to why it just didn't work. I mean, I don't think it's because of the distributor change, because this is supposed to be from like Disney via Searchlight Pictures. But then the strikes happened. They were like, we really don't want to deal with this movie, so they just gave the rights to like Universal and they released it via Focus Features. I don't think that's why this movie flopped at all. But I don't know. Like, I thought it could be like decent kind of programming. It's not like it had anything, it's dealing with anything serious the weekend it released. I mean, yeah, there was Inside Out 2, but, that was the weekend prior. But, it more or less had the weekend to itself. So I thought, okay, this could maybe hit like the teens, maybe end with like 50, 40, 50 mil, a nice middle of the road run. Open with less than 10 million. Its legs were terrible, by the way. This thing, it evaporated so fast and it confused me because this movie, like the audience was like an older audience. And usually older audiences tend to stick around for movies that are geared towards them. This didn't happen at all here. I mean, look at that. It just evaporated. And the thing is, like, reviews for this movie were good, but the audience score, I remember it being a B. That might have done it in, because if you have a B cinema score, that tells me word of mouth is hella mid, and that's never good. So it's never good for like longevity. So especially if it's not a horror movie. And yeah, that made like 21 mil, 35 million, and no one even talks about it or even really remembers it. So it just kind of happened. Just kind of existed. The Exorcism, let's talk about that for a quick moment. So this movie, first of all, people were confused about this movie because people were like, wait a minute. Didn't Russell Crowe make an Exorcist movie like last year? Yeah, he did. That movie was The Pope's Exorcist, but this is unrelated to that. Even though, I mean, the fact that he made like two exorcism movies back to back, and like, of course, people are gonna make the connection that, oh, they're connected, even though they're not. But the thing is, this movie was like filmed like way back. I think it was like 2019. I think it was years ago. But I will check really fast because I know it was a long time ago, and it kind of shocked me. I'm like, it took this long to release this damn movie. Why? Like, it made no sense to me. Yeah, this fucking filmed in 2019. 2019, and it said like post production didn't finish until 2024. I'm like, you had five, four fucking years to do something, and you just didn't. You didn't do a damn thing. Like, what was going on? And it took like 4 years. Apparently, it said principal photography began in November 2019, wrapped in December. Additional filming didn't take place until 2023. Like, why did I don't know what's going on. But yeah, this movie, reviews for this were bad. Audience score was abysmal. I just checked a little while ago. It got like a D. Like, you gotta try. You gotta try real hard to get a D from Cinema Score. That tells you your movie is really fucking bad. And yeah, it opened like 2.5 mil, made like not even 5 million here, 8 million worldwide. And yeah, now it's forgotten by everyone. So yeah, let's move on. I guess with Thelma did all right for itself. I forgot to mention that in the part one. Now we're at the end of June. Forgot to mention another positive. Kalki, 2898 AD for like a Bollywood slash Tollywood movie. Did quite alright for itself. 18 million. That's pretty good. Okay, what's not good is Horizon. Horizon and American Saga Chapter 1. Ooh. Ooh. So this was Kevin Costner's passion project. He put his own money into this. He left Yellowstone to do these movies. Yes, I said movies, because this is supposed to be a series. A series of movies. 4 movies, in fact. It's literally James Cameron with Avatar sequels. That's literally what's going on here. And when you make a plan like this, it's very risky, because you need to know damn well that the first chapter is the most important, right? Because if your first chapter is a hit, then it'll make people want to see the rest. If the first chapter is a flop and is terrible, no one's going to want to bother with the rest. rest. So you have to make sure part one is really good. You can't think that far ahead and just assume, oh, everything's gonna work out. Because if you do that and part one fails, then you just wasted a bunch of time on sequels that are never gonna get made and are never gonna release. There have been plenty of sequels out there that suffered this. A lot of canceled sequels out there. But Horizon was different. I mean, Chapter 2 already had a release date, August 16th, not even 2 months after Chapter 1. Like, that's just crazy right there. Like, the gap between releases should not be this small ever. But, yeah, but, Kevin Costner, he bet on himself. He released, the movie released. Reviews were not good. Audience reaction was quite bad. I think I got like a B minus, which is terrible for like a movie where like the demo, the has like an older audience. Like with an older audience, if you get like a B minus, then that's death. And that's what happened with this movie. It opened like 11 million domestically, 29 million overall, 31 million worldwide. Just like Bike Riders, this movie had like no legs after opening weekend, which again is unusual for a movie that has like an older as again an older audience. So what happened here? What went wrong? Well, I already mentioned reviews weren't good. The audience score wasn't good either. And there's also the fact that people just were just like, why is this like a? Did this really have to be a movie? Like, why couldn't this just be like a show or like a mini series on the Paramount Plus or Max or something? Well, turns out I found out about this is that when all these Horizon movies come out after they release, then they'll be like reorganized into like a mini series. Like, I'm dead serious. That's the plan, the real plan that they have with these movies. And I'm just like, why couldn't you just make them like, ugh, like why just why not just make this a mini series to begin with? Why? Just why? Like, I don't understand. It makes no sense at all. Especially it makes like no sense to release them all theatrically, because if you do that, then I mean, chapter one already failed. So to make the other chapters, you're literally burning money at that point. Like, it would just be a waste of effort. and and like again, like because chapter one was so lackluster, why would anyone watch chapter two? Right? It would make no, like, just none of this adds up at all. And the thing, chapter two was supposed to come out in August, disappeared, gone, never to be seen again. At least for now, it's currently up in the ether, just you know, dateless. Who knows when it'll release in theaters? Who knows when it'll release at all? Because I feel like Warner Brothers, when they like distributed this movie, I feel like they've lost all hope for this series. For the only dude who like the only person who still believes in this movie is Kevin Costner himself, and nobody else. So um yeah. Yeah, Horizon American Saga Chapter 1, big flop. Pretty much killed Chapter 2. Or at least it killed Chapter two's original release date. And yeah, nothing else really to say about the rest of June. So let's move on to July. Forgot to mention about Maxine in the last video. That did okay. Um, Kinds of Kindness, that didn't have high expectations anyway. Not really gonna go into that. Sound of Hope, though. Let's talk about this. Okay, so this was from Angel Studios. I already mentioned how they're pretty much a one-hit wonder at this point. And this is also from the Daily Wire. Yeah, those guys. They partnered with like this movie. They basically get it in theaters, and like that may have been like the problem right there, because it caused a lot of discourse around the movie to the point where I forgot her name, Lolita, not Lolita, Latita Wright, Shuri from Black Panther. She like produced this movie, and she had to go out and distance herself from Daily Wire. She had to make a whole statement about it. Because and she was just like, "Look, don't blame this on me. I had nothing to do with this. This was not my decision." And like, I have like the statement right here off screen. It says, to be clear, after we completed the production of this film, Angel Studios were brought on board to handle its distribution, and they later partnered with the Daily Wire. That was not my decision. I was not given an update or made aware of this decision. I am in no way aligned or affiliated with the Daily Wire. She also says, it's a shame to see pockets of discourse online take a divisive political turn. This story isn't about politics, it's about children. Right? That's what she said. And obviously that stuff like that doesn't help the movie. What really doesn't help the movie is there was like a tweet that I just remembered that Matt Walsh, the guy behind Am I Racist, which came out a couple weeks ago, he made a tweet about the movie that just kind of told me, just it really just showed like the type of like marketing you just don't do, the way you don't promote a movie. Like the tweet reads, in the late 1990s, Christian families in the small town of Possum Trot, Texas, adopted 77 children from the foster care system. It was a heroic effort by a small church community. See, that's fine. That is acceptable. Nothing wrong with that. But then he just had to say, today, leftists are trying to stop Christians from saving more children. And I'm just like, well, there goes all of like any like real positivity, any like sentimental value. You just killed it. You literally killed it. You just made it political for no reason, and you just screwed over the whole message. And this is like what Latita Wright was like talking about, making it political. Like, but you made it political, and you have the gall to be like, oh, all these other things are making the things so political. Well, you are too. You're no better than them. You're just on the opposite side of the coin. Like, come on, man. Like, a tweet like that is not going to sell movie tickets. And if anything, it's just going to make people just like roll their eyes. So, yeah, just stuff like that. It doesn't help a movie at all. It didn't help this movie. I mean, obviously, Angel Studios, they wanted this to be like, they wanted to emulate the success of Sound of Freedom so bad. I mean, like, come on, the title of this movie, Sound of Hope, like Sound of Hope, Sound of Freedom, like, come on. You think this is a part of a franchise? Like they use the name just to hopefully get a couple, get some ticket sales, but that it just didn't happen, man. It didn't happen at all. Over like 3.5 million on 4th of July, and then it just collapsed after that, never recovered. Over like 3 million on a proper weekend, and then it just collapsed. Oh, look at that, just evaporated. And then making like $11 million. For comparison's sake, Sound of Freedom made over $180 million in the States alone, over 250 million worldwide. So big yikes, big old yikes. And yeah, that was Sound of Hope. Now we have Fly Me to the Moon. Ugh. The movie that pretty much killed Apple's theatrical aspirations. Now, when this movie was releasing, I didn't know how to. And I guess my prediction was just like, well, it might find an audience, it might not. But considering this is from Apple, I'm like, it's probably not going to find an audience. And it sure didn't. Because it opened with like 9.4 million. Its legs were horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. I mean, look at this. This is the type of decline I would expect from like a really bad horror movie, or like a just a lackluster superhero movie. Not a movie like this. Not a rom com. Well, this is very unusual. So it only made like 20 million in the States, 38 million worldwide on a budget of 100 million, which is just, why does this cost 100 million? Why? Rom-coms are one of the cheapest genres out there. Like, why did this cost so much? Like, why is Apple spending all this money on these movies? Like, it makes no sense. Like, you're just, I get Apple is like this $1 trillion like company, but like this doesn't make you look good at all. It just makes you just foolish, real foolish, and you're just getting nothing but bad headlines about how all these movies are just not, they're all not finding an audience, and this was like the worst performing one out of the recent Apple movies that released. Killers of the Flower Moon, Napoleon, and Argyle. This was by far and away the worst one performance wise, and it did so bad that Wolves, which was supposed to come out this weekend, was pulled from theatrical release literally a month before it was supposed to go out, and now it's just going to go on Apple TV Plus. So yeah, I mean, I know there's F1 next year, but that's gonna flop too because who gives a shit about F1 Formula One racing in the States? That's never been big here, so I imagine that's gonna be a flop next year too. And yeah, just and now Apple, like, they've more or less given up on theatrical releases because there's just the headlines, like they did not like the headlines at all. Which, I mean, well, yeah, makes sense. And yeah, Fly Me to the Moon, big old flop, and it basically killed Apple theatrical movies. So yeah, that's not great. And then the rest of July, I mean, there's nothing really else to say. I mean, Fabulous Four, who cares about that? August, Firing Squad, like, whatever. Harold and the Purple Crayon, let's talk about that one. Okay. Ooh, this movie, this is a prime example of a movie that nobody wanted at all. Because, like, Harold and the Purple Crayon, I mean, that's been around for, like, generations. But that's an old series. And it's not like a series that, can be, like, real, like, that become, that remains, like, contemporary, that remains, like, relevant to an extent. Like, say, a Scooby-Doo or a Sonic the Hedgehog or something like that. It's just not, it doesn't have the same appeal as those franchises. But with this movie, like when Zachary Levi was cast, everyone, including me, probably assumed that he would be like Harold's dad, and Harold would just be like a kid, right? But turns out Zachary Levi ended up being a Harold, a grown-up version of Harold, and people were just like, "Bruh, what is this? Why?" Like, even though this movie had no demand, like this was any Harold and the Purple Crayon fan out there was just like, no, this is not what they wanted at all. And they successfully made a movie that appealed to absolutely nobody. So, that's a recipe for success. And yeah, this movie predictably flopped over like 6 million, maybe like 17 million domestically, 23 million on a budget of 40 million. Flop. Certified flop. And just like this whole movie was a mistake. Actually, I think I mentioned this in my prediction video, but this whole movie, it just felt like a script that was written in like 2004 or 5, and it just sat there, collected dust until someone recently just found it, blew the dust off, and said, yeah, I could do something with this. And they rewrote some stuff to make it more hip and said, yep, we got a movie. Like that's what this movie feels like. And Zachary Levi, he's I feel like the whole, I'm gonna, how do I describe this? Like, I'm a kid in an adult's body, like that whole thing, like it's got to stop. It's just got to stop. It's been played out, especially with the Shazam movies. Like the first time, you say, okay, there's a bit of charm there. Like, okay, this is kind of fun. But once you do it like more than once, like the charm, it wears off real quick. So if I were Zachary Levi, I would stop taking roles like this. That would be my advice. And yeah, Harold and the Purple Crayon, flop. What else? Cuckoo, like the expectations for that were real low anyway. So, but Borderlands. Oh boy, Borderlands. I've been waiting to talk about this one. Oof. This movie right here. Where do I start? Where do I begin? I mean, this movie had so much working against it. I mean, the franchise is based on the Borderlands games. They haven't been really popular or like really well liked since like Borderlands 2. And that was well over a decade ago because this series has a reputation for being extremely annoying and obnoxious. And it's led to the point where the series has more or less become like irrelevant. I mean, Borderlands 3, I guess it did all right, but no one really talks about that game in a positive light. So, yeah, the series is not the Borderlands games are not in a great place. But then with this movie, I mean, first of all, so Eli Roth, I mean, he's made quite a few movies. Some of his movies are better than others, but he has a bit of a following. But with this movie, literally, I mentioned this in my recap video for August. But with this movie, his whole like his the idea of this movie came to him. I shit you not. It came to him when his French bulldog took a shit. Yep, that is a real story. It's on the Wikipedia page for this movie. It's a whole section. It's a whole little paragraph that he said, I have, it says Eli Roth stated his French bulldog pooping gave him inspiration while pitching the film. He said, I have to look away because she gets really shy. But one day I filmed her. She had that shy look on her face, and I was like, that's Claptrap. And it says a scene of Claptrap pooping was included in the final film. And that should have told you everything right there. That should have been the ultimate red flag that this movie was not going to be of high quality, not even a mediocre quality. And there's also that was the first problem, and then there's just a whole other lot of problems after that. The fact that this movie was filmed like in 2021, and then they did nothing with this thing for years. It just sat on the shelf. So it got its 2024 release date. There's the fact that people didn't like the casting of this movie. A lot of the roles people thought were miscast, like Kate Blanchett and Kevin Hart. The marketing for this movie was lackluster. The PG-13 rating made no sense considering the games were M-rated. like, like why even do that? And like it's not even like a Mortal Kombat situation, like with the first Mortal Kombat movie being PG-13. At least like the audience, like the fan base skewed pretty young, like kids and teens were like into Mortal Kombat. So it makes sense to make that PG-13 so you can have them watch the movie. Borderlands, that was always an adult series. So making it PG-13 is stupid. Real stupid. And yeah, reviews for this movie were awful. They were so bad. For a while, it was like at 3%. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, I thought it hit like 20%, not 3. It ultimately went up to 10%, which yay, I guess. You're not like rock bottom anymore, but you're still pretty close to it. An audience score was horrendous too. It got like a D plus, and because of that, the movie had a terrible opening of 8.6 million, and then had a very short life in theaters. Fell good 72%, 80%, 85%, and it was gone. By the time summer was over, so yeah, it just it ended up making like 15 million, 32 million on a budget of like 110 million for what I've said, like 110, 120 million. Like, goddamn. Oh, like this was never gonna it was never gonna go well. Ever. because this wasn't even made for Borderlands fans. Again, like Herald of Purple Crown, this was made for nobody. Like you literally made a movie that appealed to no one. You literally just made like Guardians of the Galaxy light because that's how this felt. And granted, Borderlands predates the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but you still look like a ripoff of Guardians. Like people are still gonna believe that. And yeah, just absolute catastrophe. This whole movie was a mistake. And I do find it real funny how they announced Borderlands 4, the game, right after this movie released, like a 2-ish weeks after this movie released. And I know this wasn't like the legitimate intention, but it just felt like that release, the announcement of Borderlands 4 was definitely done to make people forget about this movie. That's what I like to believe. But that definitely wasn't like the real reason. It was probably meant to, release like that anyway. But yeah, Borderlands disaster, absolute disaster. Then we got August 16th. Nothing really to note here except Ryan's World, the movie. That was a big old just fail. I'm hoping that Ryan can escape his parents because I mean the dude's like he's about to be like 13, I think. He's literally a teenager now. No teenager in the world would want to be doing like the Ryan's World shit. So hoping one day he can get away from his terrible parents and before anything like really terrible like happens like to him or he does something terrible. So I'm hoping things, don't escalate to that point. But okay, we move on to The Crow. The Crow 2024. This movie was a big old mistake. And, I mean, with the original Crow from 1994, with Brandon Lee, who tragically passed away during the movie because of a prop gun gone wrong. I mean, that movie, it was a nice little hit in 94, has a big cult following. A lot of people love the movie. But ever since then, like no Crow movie has been able to replicate that success. All of them have failed. And this was the latest failure. And this movie tried to be like, a reboot of sorts. And it just, from what I've read and because I didn't see the movie, I wasn't about to watch this. It just didn't work. It didn't work at all. And the movie did just terrible. Over 4.6 million, made 9 million domestically, 50 million worldwide on a budget of 50 million. Terrible. It's just downright terrible. And everyone saw this failure coming. I mean, the first trailer released for this movie, everyone trashed it, roasted it, and it never got better. Never improved. So, yeah. This failure doesn't surprise me at all. This movie was a big old mistake. Never should have been made. They should have just left the 1994 movie alone. And that's what, a lot of people believe. Like, even like the director of the original movie, Alex Proyas, I think that's how you say his last name. Yeah, he basically shunned this movie, saying it was like a cynical cash grab. But I remember like someone making a comment, but like, can this movie really be a cash grab if there's no cash to grab? And I thought that comment was just perfect, just a perfect comment right there. So yeah, this movie was made as a cash grab with no cash to grab. That is the perfect way to describe this movie. In fact, it's the perfect way to describe a lot of movies, honestly. Like Borderlands. Well, at least even Borderlands, that had a better chance of success than this. So, yeah. The Crow 2024 fail. Let's move on. Now we're at the last weekend of summer. What else? 1992, City of Dreams, Slingshot. You gotta believe these are all like small failures. They're nothing that really interesting. I guess with City of Dreams, I can say that movie tried to be like Sound of Freedom, didn't work at all. Had like all this bit of publicity surrounding it, and it didn't do a damn thing. No one watched it. So, but Afraid, I'll talk about that one because Afraid Like that seemed like it was gonna be like the big. I'm using air quotes when I say that. The big movie of the weekend in theory, because it's from like Blumhouse. Blumhouse has a solid track record, but with this movie, no one saw it. No one gave a shit. Over like 3.6 million. This is on a holiday weekend too. It made like over 6.7 million. I mean, it's gone from theaters now. And this is one of Blumhouse's worst performing movies. Like it is like damn near rock bottom for them. So yeah, the yikes, big yikes, and yeah, no one even remembers this even came out except me. I didn't see it, but I made a video on it. So yeah, that's how I remember a lot of these movies when most people don't. All because I made videos on them. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it for summer. So yeah, summer 2024 started out real bad. It got a whole lot better, and it ended on a blank note. So yeah, well, not a great summer. It could have been infinitely worse. Just a whole lot worse. So now we move on, like the last few months of the year. I mean, we're currently in September. September is just about over. And we got a big hit in the form of Beetlejuice. And there's still surely some surefire hits coming out later this year. You know, Joker 2, Venom The Last Dance, Wicked seems like a big hit. Moana 2, Sonic 3 is a guaranteed hit right there. Mufasa, I guess. But there's a lot of question marks regarding some of these movies. Like, I don't know about Gladiator 2. I don't know about Red 1. I don't know about Craven. I feel like that's going to be a flop. Um, but yeah, so 2024 still has some hits on the way, but at this point, I'm kind of just ready for 2025. So yeah, so that was summer. So summer 2024. So yeah, that's it. That's all. Make sure to subscribe, like this video, leave a comment, turn on notifications, share the whole drill. You want to check out more videos like this? We got playlists on the homepage. All previous recap videos I made this year, the past few years. You want to watch any of the recaps, particularly part one of my summer recap, summer 2024 recap. Want to watch that before watching this? Go well, yeah. If you want to watch part one, go right ahead. There's also box office predictions where I predict box office for movies. Pretty much every movie I talked about here, I made a prediction video for. So if you want to watch any of those videos or any of the past prediction videos I made this year, the past few years, you can go right ahead. There's also the canceled series where I went over all the movies that were supposed to come out but didn't for 250 episodes. As I mentioned, the canceled series ended this past summer. I have no real regrets ending it because I was just burned out with that series. I just didn't want to do it anymore. Part of me wishes I could have made one more episode about Shrek 5, but too late now. So, yeah. But if you want to watch any of the past, all the cancel episodes, you want to watch them all from beginning to now, I highly encourage you to do that. So go do it. And yeah, that's it. That's all. I am out. Goodbye.